Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. On behalf of Holt Construction, welcome to our series, Get to Work on Terminal 8, the strategic programming we have created in partnership with American Airlines to engage, inform, and hire certified MWBEs, LBEs, and members of Queens community interested in working on the JFK Terminal 8 expansion. My name is Chris Asara, and I serve as president of Holt Construction, a family-owned and operated full-service construction management and general contracting firm. If you have never worked with Holt before, you should know that when it comes to diversity and inclusion, our commitment is built from the top down and from the inside out. We have taken on the JFK Terminal 8 expansion like all of our other projects, and that includes creating a tailored, unique, and comprehensive diversity plan. I'm excited to kick off today's session, and I hope you find the information engaging and informative. On behalf of Holt, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us, and I look forward to connecting and working with you. Now it is my pleasure to welcome our project partner and familiar face to this project, Sade Olapeckin-Lewis, Regional Director of Government and Airport Affairs at American Airlines Terminal 8.
Hello, everyone. On behalf of American Airlines and the John F. Kennedy International Airport Terminal 8 expansion, welcome to today's Get to Work session. My name is Sade Olapeckin-Lewis, and I serve as the Regional Director of Government and Airport Affairs at American Airlines. JFK is getting ready to welcome a new American Airlines Terminal 8. The project will improve the overall customer experience with a total of 70,400 square feet of added space, including 33,000 square feet of public space. Another 57,500 square feet of existing space will be refurbished. The new Terminal 8, American Airlines and Holt Construction are committed to engaging, preparing, and hiring certified minority and women-owned business enterprises, MWBEs, local business enterprises, LBEs, and construction workers for the project. This series of programming entitled Get Ready to Work at Terminal 8 has been strategically designed for certified firms and the local community workforce who would like to work on the JFK Terminal 8 expansion. Sessions will begin in January of 2021 to help you open gates to contracts, jobs, and information. I want to sincerely thank you for taking time out of your busy day to attend today's session. As a small business owner, we know you have a lot on your plate, and we will be respectful of your time today. Today's program is called, What is a Project Labor Agreement, and How Do I Sign On? The JFK Terminal 8 expansion requires that all firms either be a union contractor, union subcontractor, or sign onto the Project Labor Agreement, also known as a PLA. This must-attend session will start with the basics of a PLA and review the JFK Terminal 8 expansion PLA. We'll also review your rights under PLA, how to find union labor, and how MWBEs and LBEs can participate on the project.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to introduce you to Gary LaBarbera, the President of Buildings and Construction Trades Council of Greater New York. To talk a little bit about Terminal 8, I'd like to discuss the PLA that has been approved for Terminal 8. With that said, for the audience, what is a PLA, and could you describe the role of a PLA on a project such as Terminal 8 redevelopment?
Yes, Mark, thank you. So project labor agreements are widely used in the city of New York, in particular on large-scale projects. There are both project labor agreements in the public sector arena as well as in the private sector arena. In the public sector, we have project labor agreements with every mayoral agency, with the School Construction Authority, with NYCHA, with Health and Hospitals Corporation. In the state, we have project labor agreements with the Dormitory Authority of State of New York. Private sector, again, we have many private sector PLAs, and both the private sector and in the private sector, the amount of work covered under project labor agreements in the last 10 years is in excess of $100 billion. So these are widely used, and the project labor agreement's purpose is essentially as follows. Project labor agreements add a large degree of stability to a project. Now, what do I mean by stability? Project labor agreements contain the terms and conditions of employment. It also contains work rules, for example. And what the project labor agreement does is standardizes much of the union's work rules. We standardize holidays, and we also have a no strike clause, which is very important to owners in the construction industry, because schedule, as you know, Mark, is everything on a project. So when we sign a project labor agreement, we pledge that regardless of any circumstances on the job site or collective bargaining issues, there will be no strikes, there will be no work stoppages. These project labor agreements also include what's known as the New York Plan for Jurisdictional Dispute Resolution, which if there is a jurisdictional dispute between two unions in terms of the performance of work or the assignment of work, there was no interruption on the job site. There was a process that we follow, and it is resolved between the two unions, either through a mediation or through a final and binding arbitration. There's also a grievance procedure that sets forth if there are any grievances on the project, very similar type pathway to solving and resolving grievances. So the project labor agreements are generally between either an owner or a construction manager in this case, and the Building Trades Council. And they provide, again, for the standardization of work rules and all the wages and benefits, and as well as the no strike clause. The project labor agreement requires that the work performed on the project will be required by affiliates of the Building Trades Council. But it is important to note that the project labor agreement does not prevent non-union contractors from bidding on the project. Non-union contractors can bid, in fact, on any of our project labor agreement projects. And if they are awarded work, they sign what is known as a letter of assent, and then they are bound to the terms and conditions of the project labor agreement. So to really sum it up, the real purpose of a project labor agreement leads to stability, efficiency, and a much better schedule. And if there are any grievances or any issues on the site, the project labor agreement contains the mechanism to resolve them, so there is no interruptions or slowdowns on a project. And that's why project labor agreements are valued in the way they are.
Understood, and thank you. Which trades are included or subject to the PLA?
Every trade in the Building Trades Council is subject to the project labor agreement. As again, the project labor agreement actually contains languages that the affiliates of this Building Trades Council, the Building Construction Trades Council of Greater New York, or affiliates of the national unions as well, international unions, they are party to this, the terms and conditions of this agreement.
Understood. So you touched on this a little bit before, but to expand on it a little bit more, there's a provision in the PLA allowing for enhanced MWBE participation by awarding contractors that are not signatory to the Schedule A to participate in the project. Could you describe this and also the requirements for these firms to participate?
Right. So generally speaking, what we do in project labor agreements, both in public and private sector project labor agreements, is there's been a real focus on advancing the opportunities for MWBEs in the city of New York, and we've supported that. So what we have done is in all the project labor agreements, there's something known as a carve out, and that carve out is focused for MWBEs. And in this particular project labor agreement, it's a 5% of the overall cost of the project. So we've carved out the project value of $8 million. So this project value is $160 million. $8 million is a carve out, and that is for MWBEs to work under the project labor agreement. They're carved out from the project labor agreement. The reason that we do that is it is always important to us to see that we can get non-union MWBEs in particular to work on a site that is basically a union site, and to get them to experience the opportunity. Generally larger construction projects are union projects, and we see this as an opportunity for these contractors to develop and grow, become more familiarized with how union jobs are run, union work rules. And the hope is that they will continue to grow and bid on these project labor agreements, both in the private and public sector, and eventually recognize the value of a very highly trained and skilled workforce, and ultimately sign collective bargaining agreements with the respective trades. And we have had a lot of MWBEs over the years through project labor agreements, especially with the School Construction Authority, that have graduated essentially into becoming union contractors. And the more union contractors we have in the industry, the better it is for the industry, obviously, because there's more competition and it makes the industry more economically viable. So that's why we've agreed to this. And again, we've done this widely in almost all of our project labor agreements, and we've had a very large measure of success.
This one's going to be a couple of different pieces, Gary, so it's a lot of questions. I guess I'll put them all out there and then you can answer them. So
sure.
I'll go with it. So for the participants listening in on this session, what happens if you have an issue under a project with a PLA? And this consists of multiple parts. If you're a non-union subcontractor and you have signed on to the PLA and working side by side with the union subcontractors, what do you do if there's a labor issue? Who do they call? What should they do? How do they document it? And who do I send the documents to? What is the dispute resolution process for this project under this PLA?
Right. So as I mentioned earlier, in the project labor agreements, all of the dispute resolution procedures are very clearly delineated. So if there is an issue that comes up, generally what happens is the subcontractor will consult with the construction manager on the project, and with the construction manager's assistance, they will, depending upon what the dispute is, they will literally go to the project labor agreement, and all of the procedures are laid out. So there's generally 3 steps to the grievance procedure. Step 1 is we try to have the issue resolved between parties on the job site. And if that is unsuccessful, we go to step 2, which is a mediation. And I serve as the mediator. And what I do is I bring the parties together and I put my mediator's hat on and I try to get the resolution of the dispute. The vast majority of times we're able to do that through the mediation process. Sometimes it just takes some more communication, maybe deeper communication, and we can work through that. If in the event there's an issue that cannot be resolved, there is an arbitration procedure which that arbitrator would make the final and binding decision. Again, the majority of disputes, and there aren't generally many on project labor agreements because of the way the agreement is structured. Again, that's another added value to a project labor agreement. But generally, the majority of disputes that do arise are settled in step 1 or step 2 of the process. Very few actually result in going to an arbitration. So it's very well delineated in the project labor agreement. And again, we've had project labor agreements well in excess of $100 billion. And really, there's been very, very few disputes. When you think about the magnitude of work that goes on, when you think about that scope of work, very, very few disputes that ever really wind up in arbitration. Most of them, candidly, with the assistance of the construction manager, subcontractor, and the union trade, is resolved right on the job site.
Thank you. So for firms that are looking to hire union labor, how does a firm find and hire union labor?
Right. Well, that's very simple. Depending upon what the trade it is, if they're looking to bring in union labor, they can simply contact the trade. If they need contact information, they can always call this council, the Building Trades Council here. We can give them the contact information and the right people to talk to at the local union, and then the local union will work out with that subcontractor or contractor a referral system. And again, we've always been able to refer people upon request. That's one of the real advantages of the unionized industry, is we have a very deep breadth of highly skilled, trained workforce. So there's never been an issue there, and it's just really a phone call to the respective trade, and they'll figure out a referral system.
Understood. So a question that we've been receiving a lot is regarding bidding on the project. And you did mention this before, but if you're a non-union MWBE, can you bid on the Terminal 8 project? And if you are a non-union locally based business, how can you participate in this project?
Right. Well, when the contracts go to, as we say, go to the street, as you know, and the bid packages go out, if you through RFP or an RFQ, any contractor can bid on that. If a contractor is awarded the work and it is covered under the project labor agreement, they would sign a letter of assent. It is not a contract with the local union. It is a letter of assent. It is for that project and that project only. And that letter of assent is binds them to the terms and conditions of the project labor agreement. So we've had many, hundreds of non-union contractors, especially in the world of NYCHA and the SCA. We have a long experience with this that do sign on and bid that work and sign on to the letters of assent. And again, over the years, when we think about the scope of the work, very few problems that I can tell you. So that's all they would have to do. This is the project labor agreement does not preclude anyone from bidding on the work. If they're awarded the work and they're a non-union contractor, they simply have to sign a letter of assent, and that binds them to the terms and conditions of that agreement for that project only. And that's, I know, a big issue in the non-union community because, many smaller contractors want to try to grow into the union market, but are reluctant because they don't necessarily feel that they're prepared to take this full step in signing a contract with a union. But the letter of assent and the PLA process is a really good way to start to familiarize themselves, get experience with the unionized industry. And again, it's only binding them to the terms and conditions of the project labor agreement for that project. When the project is over or their work is over, they're not bound to a collective bargaining agreement. Many times, and we encourage it, non-union contractors will in fact decide, I am going to sign a contract because I will have the ability to build my business, have the ability to a highly trained and skilled workforce and be able to bid larger scale projects. So, we want to see union contractors continue to grow and thrive. And so that's why we have done this way in terms of the letters of assent. And also legally, we can't preclude anyone from bidding work. So that's how that works.
Sounds like a great opportunity. So more focused on the labor side, there are references in the PLA that focus on hiring of local employees for this project, specifically in the zip codes immediately surrounding JFK. Could you describe how workers can engage either through apprenticeships or as journey persons on this project?
Right. So when we do project labor agreements in various communities, there's generally either a workforce development or a local hire component. In this case, we have a local hire component. And so what we try to do is we try to have a certain percentage of the project, which I think is a great concept, people working on the project from the local community, right? And that makes sense to me. So where we have unionized contractors and we have a high density of union members in these zip codes, we do work with our union contractors to assign workers from those zip codes. We've done this very successfully throughout the city over the years so that, you can have 30% of local hire on a job. So that's for the journey persons. On the apprenticeship, this is where, through the collaboration of American Airlines, Holt, and the building trades in this PLA, we will, open up the opportunities that come into these pre-apprentice programs. And people from those zip codes or in the community can identify, if they're interested, a couple of ways. One is, as I mentioned, the 4 programs, and I'm sure there'll be information, on the site and available to all contractors and for the community as well. They can go right to any one of the 4 programs' websites, get their contact information. Or, we are going to be working collaboratively with Holt and American Airlines to do community outreach. And that is another way that people come in, meet with our folks, learn more about the construction industry and the pathways into our apprentice programs. So again, there's two different scenarios, but in this PLA, both of those scenarios in terms of outreach to the community and the local hire component of people from that area is in this PLA, and I think it's going to be a very successful program, actually.
Yeah, we hope so. So, and previously you mentioned that many contractors, I would say, grow into a union contractor. So if you're a specific trade, how could they help to understand more about joining a union if they sign up onto this project, and are there elements to their bid that they should consider? And a little bit furthermore, could you describe the requirements of how to grow into a union contractor as referenced in the PLA?
Right. So look, I mean, let me say this. Essentially, we encourage strongly non-union contractors to consider becoming a union contractor. And let me just describe the reasons why again. As you know, Mark, in this city, larger scale projects, especially projects like airport projects or other big institutional projects, and certainly in the public work arena, as I mentioned, just about every mayoral agency and city agency and authority is signed to a project labor agreement, and this has been going on a decade. We've had enormous success. And what we find is that when contractors want to grow their business, the only way they can do that, obviously, is by taking on more work, right? Creating more cash flow, more revenue, and therefore more opportunity for themselves. Project labor agreements are a vehicle in which they can do that. And essentially, they get to work on a construction site. They get familiar with the union rules. They get familiar with the wages and benefits. They get familiar with, frankly, the workforce and the union representatives. And essentially, they can actually just have the conversation if they think they're at that point in their business that they want to take the next big step forward. It's very simple. It's a conversation, a discussion with the local union. The local union will obviously encourage them to sign on. They will walk them through their individual collective bargaining agreement. In most cases, before any contractor signs, they generally have an attorney review everything, and there's many conversations. But the information is available, the opportunity is available, and again, I think it's a good opportunity. Candidly, we're going to be hearing over the next 2 days about probably the largest infrastructure plan in the history of New York State. The governor has been talking the last 2 days in the state of the states. There's going to be enormous opportunity. And that's all public work, and that work will likely be covered under prevailing wage and project labor agreements. So this is a great opportunity now for non-union contractors to think about growing, becoming a union contractor. And this project is a very significant project, and hopefully we'll have success on this project as well.
Gary, I thank you so much for taking the time to review this with us. We really appreciate it. And now let's take some audience questions, and hopefully we'll have the answers. And hopefully this session was informative to everybody who participated.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a pleasure.